Hello, everyone. Well,
Hello.
welcome to what's actually a crossover, but what is now officially the season 3 premiere of Nick Files. I am officially back and ready to send out the files to everyone. So it's definitely great to be back on. We apologize that we ran later than usual, about 20 minutes later than usual, because, well, I'll explain everything later on. But man, I gotta say, it's just really great to be back. And Lois, good to have you on, obviously, in this rare case, because normally I don't have anyone on for Nick
Yep.
Files. So,
So it's like us two together.
oh, that's just the RU Media Network page. Hello, Nigel.
Cool.
Good to see you.
Hey, Nigel.
But man, this I don't know how else I could have started season 3 better, but I got a very special presentation that we're actually going to be splitting into two parts, which is the reason why this is going to be a crossover between this show and To the Gravenback. But today actually marks, and we don't really do this very often, in fact, Lois, especially To the Gravenback. Today
Yep.
we're actually doing a show on the actual anniversary of an event that occurred over half a century ago, 50 years ago today. One of the
Oh my.
largest and deadliest tornado outbreaks to ever hit the United States occurred on April 3rd, 1974. And that actually reminds me, while I'm talking about this, I'm actually going to share this show out to the because there is actually a like I said, there is actually a paranormal paranormal. There's actually a super outbreak Facebook page, and I promised that I was going to send this out to the guys that to the people that wanted to see the show. So give me 1 second here. How many we got? About okay, we got about 5 others watching
Hi.
right now.
So
So
how is everybody? Everybody having a good week?
I know it's been
I feel
chilly.
so weird being on the Nick files.
I know it's weird too for me, but then again, I still consider it as part of I still consider it as also as an episode To the Gravenback. So give me yeah, so wouldn't feel too weird about it.
Ah, hey,
Hello,
Eric.
Eric. Give me here. I'm almost done with the link here, and then we'll get started. So give me. Sorry, just got to put this out.
No, it's all right, honey. I'm sharing as well. So we're probably double sharing and triple sharing, but as long as people
Okay. All right, we're all set. I mean, it's going to need some. It's one of those pages that does need some approval, So there's probably going to have to be a wait, but it doesn't matter. But anyways, we're going to get started. Like I said, this slideshow that I have ready to go, I already explained this to Lois. Unfortunately, it's not fully completed, but I do have pretty much enough to cover for a good majority of the show tonight, because, like I said, this is going to be a two-parter. We're going to start with today and then continue onwards for tomorrow. So whatever we get through today, and if we get, I don't know even know if we will get to the end, because there's also going to be a number of videos here that I'm going to be showing as well, which also will really help me out, because honestly, I only had 2 days to put this slideshow together, and my time was extremely, extremely limited. But either way, without further ado, why don't we get started? So give me a second
Yep.
here. I always have to go through this trick every single time whenever I um, put these up on StreamYard. Can you let me know, Lois, if you could see the presentation?
Yep.
Okay. Now, as
Yep.
usual, now as usual, I can't see the comments when I'm doing this. So, Lois, like before, I'm going to put you in charge of the comments if you can do that.
That's fine. I'll be your lovely assistant.
So, as I said, today marks the official 50th anniversary of the April 3rd and 4th, 1974 tornado outbreak, also known as the super outbreak. And like I said, until the 2011 super outbreak, this was the largest tornado outbreak have ever affected the United States. Obviously, because there were so many of them, we're not going to be covering exactly every single one because for two reasons. One, it would be even longer to cover all these different tornadoes individually, and secondly, some of these tornadoes there's no information on them I could find. So essentially, some of that information has been lost to time. As a result of that, we're going to be focusing on the more notorious tornadoes and also, to some degree, some of the lesser known tornadoes that were also associated with the parent storms that spawned them. So here we go. Now, this first piece of information that I actually got this from a film, but I like the way how this guy said it so much that I decided to use the exact same lines that this film used. So here we go. It was a most unusual day. From the west, a cold front, riding in high on the jet stream. From the Gulf of Mexico, a low mass of moist, warm, unstable air heading northward. And when they collided, it became the day of the killer tornadoes. Now, how it all originally started, we're just going to kind of look at this from a meteorological standpoint. A powerful springtime low pressure system developed across the North American interior plains on April 1st. While moving into the Mississippi and Ohio valleys, a surge of unusually moist air intensified the storm further, while there were sharp temperature contrasts between both sides of the system. Officials at NOAA and in the National Weather Service forecast offices were expecting a severe weather outbreak on April 3rd, but not to the extent that ultimately occurred. Several F2 and F3 tornadoes had struck portions of the Ohio Valley in the south in a separate earlier outbreak on April 1st and 2nd, which included 3 killer tornadoes in Kentucky, Alabama, and Tennessee. The town of Campbellsburg, northeast of Louisville, was hard hit in this earlier outbreak, with a large portion of the town destroyed by an F3. Between the two outbreaks, an additional tornado was reported in Indiana in the early morning hours of April 3rd, several hours before the official start of the outbreak. On Wednesday, April 3rd, severe weather watches already were issued from the morning from south of the Great Lakes, while in portions of the upper Midwest, snow was reported, with heavy rain falling across central Michigan and much of Ontario. By 12 UTC on April 3rd, a large-scale trough extended over the most contiguous United States, with several modest shortwaves rotating around the broad base of the trough. The mid-latitude low-pressure center over Kansas continued to deepen to 980 millibars, and wind speeds at the 850 millibar level increased to 58 miles per hour over portions of Louisiana, Mississippi, and Alabama. Due to the significant moisture advection, destabilization rapidly proceeded up space. The warm front near the Gulf Coast dissipated and then redeveloped northward over the Ohio River Valley. Consequently, Cape levels in the region rose to 1,000 kilograms. However, a warm temperature plume in the elevated mixed layer kept thunderstorms from initiating at the surface. Meanwhile, a large mesoscale convective system, MCS, that had developed overnight in Arkansas continued to strengthen due to strong environmental lapse rates. Later in the day, strong daytime heating caused instability to further rise. By 1800 UTC, Cape values in excess of 2,500 J kilograms were present over the lower Ohio and the Mississippi Valley. As wind speeds in the troposphere increased, large-scale lifting overspread the warm sector. At the same time, the forward propagating MCS spread into the Tennessee and Ohio valleys, where it evolved into the first of 3 main convection bands that produced tornadoes. This first convective band moved rapidly northeast, at times at reaching speeds of about 69 miles per hour. However, thunderstorm activity for the moment remained mostly elevated in nature. By 1630 UTC, the large MCS began to splinter into two sections. The southern part slowed, lagging into southeast Tennessee, while the northern part accelerated, reaching Pennsylvania by 1930 UTC. The split was related to several factors, including a band of subsidence over eastern Kentucky and western West Virginia, local downslope winds over the Appalachians, and an inversion over the same area. These factors allowed the northern part of the MCS to accelerate due to efficient ducting, while the southern part slowed as the boundary layer warmed and moistened. Numerous surface-based supercells began to develop in the southern area, beginning with one that produced an F3 tornado at about 1630 UTC near Cleveland, Tennessee. Meanwhile, a new band of scattered thunderstorms developed at 1500 UTC over eastern Arkansas and Missouri, and over the next 4 hours, this band became the focus for several intense supercells starting in eastern Illinois and southern Indiana. In the wake of the MCS, backing low-level winds, rapid diurnal destabilization, and perhaps cool mid-level advection had occurred over the warm sector, weakening the convective inhibition. CINH layer and favorable wind profiles bolstered helicity to over 200. I don't even know that one, to be honest. A combination of factors conducive to tornado genesis. Consequently, the storms increased intensity and coverage as they moved into Illinois, Indiana, and northern Kentucky, producing several tornadoes, including the first F5 tornado of the day at 1920 UTC near DuPont, Indiana. Oh, I think I forgot. What's that?
Here,
I just want to see. Hey, what's up, Joe? Good to see you. What's up, Howie? Good to see you too. Let me fix something here real quick because I forgot to. I didn't realize there was a little bit more text on the bottom of this. So give me one. Let me fix that up real quick. And the picture was supposed to show up too, but fortunately I got that fixed up. So there we go. Now we're back in business.
It must be scary. It must be scary in F5. It really must be scary.
Yeah, it is. And you're going to see a lot of that occur during the slideshow. So now I got this fixed up. So now this is what I was trying to have show up on the side. Now we got it. Okay, I already said that. Several of the storms began to form between 1920 and 2020 UTC, becoming significant long-lived supercells, producing many or violent tornadoes, including 3 F5s in DePauw, Xenia, Ohio, and Brandenburg, Kentucky. These storms formed the second of 3 convective bands to generate tornadoes. Now, to focus on the actual date itself, April 3rd, 1974, Louisville, Kentucky. The staff at the National Weather Service were already very busy. The weather over the past few days have been a turbulent mix of thunderstorms and tornadoes caused by a clash of air currents. On this day, the conditions for possible tornadoes are in place. The staff knows that the weather system swirl above the U.S. is unstable and dangerous. Their technology is among the best available at the time. Meteorologists can track storm movements, but they don't have the ability to see tornadoes forming, which there's a reason for it. I mean, I'm sure you've seen some of this before. Like, back in those days, here's the thing. In 1974, the National Weather Service does have radar technology, but it's not the advanced radar as known today. Invented during World War II, the older technology is better suited for tracking solid objects like enemy aircraft. It is not well equipped for tracking tornadoes. It would have if you've never seen how it works, Lois, it's like it would have this round scope, and they would have
Yeah.
a spinning louver line going around and putting a yellow.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I've seen that. It was
yeah.
on it was in the film Tornado. I did see it. I know
Yep.
exactly what you're talking about, and they would have been no use for tornadoes. That's not going to tell you if it's an F1, 2, 3, 4, or 5.
Well, not even necessarily. You couldn't see the tornado because again, it would just this louver line going around and just putting a yellow or greenish spot on the screen, as you can see in this photo, for example. Basically, one would just see a print of the storm that was out there, but it kind of looked more like green blobs on the monitors. People back in
Yeah.
the day often usually described them as. By keeping an eye on those green blobs, forecasters can track the position of the storm, but the meteorologists have to track the storm's movement by hand. Forecasters would take a grease pencil and circle the spot on the radar and go back 15 minutes later, and they could calculate how far it moved, and they came up with some idea. They would come up with some idea of the direction and speed of movement. But it was unfortunately, I mean, as bad as it, as bad as it was, of course, like as we look at it today, that was the best they had then, back in
Yeah.
the 70s. Only when and here's the other thing, only when a tornado is seen by spotters on the ground that a tornado warning was able to be issued. Although meteorologists can accurately forecast the severe weather, their limited radar does not see tornadoes inside the storms. And there is no way to measure a storm's severity with potential for violent tornadoes. This will cause forecasters to underestimate the worst tornado outbreak in recorded history, which gets underway on the afternoon of April 3rd. From early morning, the weather now we start really going into the details about the outbreak. From early morning, the Weather Service warnings were out from the Gulf to the Canadian border. At 9:30 in the morning, the first tornado touched with some sources indicating an isolated F2, the fourth highest rating on the Fujitta scale, touches down in an open field in Indiana. Although some marked the outbreak's onset at 2:10 p.m. with an F0 in Illinois. By early afternoon, as the turbulence grows, the watches and warnings are coming thick and fast. As a result, 148 separate tornadoes would strike 13 states and one Canadian province. Tornadoes are hitting Illinois, Indiana, Michigan, Ohio, Kentucky, Tennessee, Mississippi, Alabama, Georgia, North Carolina, Virginia, West Virginia, New York, and Ontario, Canada. This tornado outbreak produced the most violent F4 and F5 tornadoes ever observed in a single tornado outbreak. There were 7 F5 tornadoes and 23 F4s. More than 100 tornadoes were associated with 33 tornado families, killing more than 300 people and injuring thousands in just 24 hours. It would become known as the super outbreak.
I'm very, very surprised that's all it killed, to be honest.
Yeah.
Have you ever had a super outbreak since, Nick?
We had a similar storm system like this actually about over a decade ago, which occurred back in April of 2011. And that actually took the spot of being, although it was the 1974 outbreak was the largest at that time, that's now actually considered the second largest because the April 2011 tornado outbreak, which became known ironically as Super Outbreak 2, had more tornadoes. So, but I don't think it had as big of a death toll as the 1974 outbreak did.
Oh, wow.
So it seems like, whether or not this is some type of situation in which, it's supposed to occur once every 40, 50 years, I have no idea. And that one back in 2011, I actually remember that outbreak, and I was watching it live when it was unfolding.
Oh my God, Nick.
Yeah. Still remember it like yesterday. So, as the storm system moved east, where daytime heating had made the air more unstable, the tornadoes grew more intense. While tornado activity increased over the warm sector, a third band of convection developed at about 12 p.m. and extended from near St. Louis into west central Illinois. Based upon real time satellite imagery and model data, differential positive vortice advection can coincide with the left exit region of an upper level jet streak, which reached winds of up to 150 miles per hour, thereby enhancing thunderstorm growth. Storms grew rapidly in height and extent, producing baseball sized hail by 1:20 p.m. in Illinois, and shortly thereafter in St. Louis, Missouri, which reported a very severe thunderstorm early in the afternoon that, while not producing a tornado, was the costliest storm to hit the city up to that time. By 3:20 p.m., supercells began producing F3 tornadoes, hitting the Decatur and Normal areas in Illinois. Which, in case you wonder, that's nowhere near the Chicago area. Fortunately, Chicago was spared, but the majority of the tornadoes that struck Illinois were mainly, like I said, down in west central, more down in central Illinois. So Chicago was Chicago was lucky that day.
I had a good day.
As thunderstorms moved into the warmer, moister air mass over eastern Illinois and Indiana, they produced longer-lived tornadoes, one of which began near Otterbein and ended near Valentine in Indiana, a distance of 121 miles, which we'll actually be discussing that one a little bit later. Among the early tornadoes that struck early that afternoon, one of the first tornadoes to affect the region was a funnel observed 8 miles northeast of Bloomington, Indiana at 2:15 p.m. It was reported to have withdrawn into the clouds at 2:30 p.m. over Franklin County. The first damage was noted 7 miles northwest of Shelbyville along I-74 at 2:45 p.m. and continued on the ground to 4 miles northeast of Greenfield. Major F3 damage occurred at the town of Fountaintown at 2:58 p.m. and one person was killed. This is what I would assume was probably one of the first casualties to this outbreak. The tornado continued to move northeast until it lifted at 3:10 p.m. after traveling an 18-mile path through the Indiana countryside, and at its width was over 1,000 yards wide. Although it was first seen as a funnel 40 miles southwest of where the damage began, although it was first seen as a funnel 40 miles southwest of where the damage began, making the path length longer than originally believed. At about the same time the Fountaintown tornado had touched down, another funnel, this time was spotted in southwestern Lawrence County at 2:15 p.m. However, the first touchdown occurred at 2:20 p.m. east of Mitchell. It left a skipping path to the intersection of Highways 50, causing relatively little damage. It was an F1, the low end of the Fujita scale, and moved just to the north of Freetown, where it eventually lifted at 2:35 p.m. after being on the ground for 20 minutes. The path had a width of 500 to 1,000 feet, and it had also traveled 18 miles. Just 10 minutes, and you're going to see a lot of this during the slideshow because there were so many that were occurring almost at the exact same time. Just 10 minutes before the Freetown tornado dissipated, yet another tornado touched 2 miles west of Brownstown at 2:25 p.m. It then continued mostly on the ground to about 5 miles south of Greensburg, developing into an F3, the middle of the Fujita scale. This was one of the first long-track tornadoes of the day, believe it or not. The tornado then struck the town of Jonesville. Major damage occurred and was also reported on several farms. Sadly, this tornado also killed one woman as it destroyed her home. The tornado then moved northeast before dissipating at 3:20 p.m. after being on the ground for 55 minutes. The F3 tornado had a width of 1/4 of a mile and a length of 32 miles. The parent thunderstorm would later produce another destructive tornado that would hit Hamburg nearly an hour later. Now, one of the first violent tornadoes of the day developed at 3 p.m., heading directly for the town of Kennard, 20 miles east of Indianapolis. This tornado, rated an F4, the second highest on the scale, would tear once again an 18-mile path with a base of more than a half-mile wide. And these are the actual photo. This is an actual photo of the tornado itself. This multiple vortex tornado touched down 2 miles east of Westland, moving through Grant City and Kennard in western Henry County and ending 4 miles north of Cadiz. The tornado damaged or destroyed 70% of Kennard, including the elementary school, which had its second story torn up. And this was actually a photo taken at the school, believe it or not. It was either the elementary school or the high school that this photograph was taken. After the tornado passed, unbelievably, a large group of Kennard grade school students emerged untouched from beneath their demolished school. The students had been aboard the buses right before the storm approached. Because they saw the tornado coming from a distance, they immediately ran back into the school to take cover. Major damage occurred at Kennard, where the north end of town was totally destroyed and taking one life. Homes were leveled at Kennard. Homes were leveled at Kennard and Grant City, destroying 48 homes there and 11 in nearby Grant City. The tornado continued to move 7 miles northwest of Newcastle, where it lifted at 3:25 p.m. after being on the ground for 25 minutes. Although the tornado ripped through Kennard, fortunately, I mean, you're going to see this in some of the other pictures that I have, it's still primarily tracked over rural areas. Tragically, now, and also that one death, tragically, the lone fatality was a 4-day-old baby at Kennard.
Oh no, that's horrible. That's really horrible.
Wait a minute. Hey, hold on 1 second here. I see something's. I must have accidentally put something else on this. Let me get rid of that extra sentence quickly.
No, you're fine. But look at the size. See your bottom picture, and you can see the width with that tornado.
Oh,
and
yeah.
it's you just think the storm chasers that day would have been so torn where to go because there was so many outbreaks around about the same time.
Oh yeah, it was huge. That was for sure. I mean, this was one of the first violent tornadoes of the day. So this was already, this was already starting to become pretty ugly already. So, and it just, no one expect. I mean, unfortunately, not many people knew that this monster was heading their way. So hang on. Okay, I got that fixed. So give me 1 second here.
No, you're all right, honey. But it must be scary especially when it's big tornadoes like that. But it does surprise me a lot that there was only that many killed. Because especially with the outbreaks and how bad some of these outbreaks were. Well,
here's some other pictures of the tornado itself. This is probably the most famous picture of this tornado. And you could tell that this tornado, you're absolutely right, though. I mean, this tornado grew very, very large, and it became it's what's known as a wedge tornado, which is the big half-mile wide twister, which means it's a monster on the ground.
Oh, God, yeah. And you've got no way to escape it. No way.
The photographer, whoever took these pictures, obviously, you could tell that he's at a good distance. But for anybody that's below the base of this mysterious monster, there's really no way to escape it.
Oh, definitely no. And as they always tell you, if a tornado doesn't look like it's moving, it's coming towards you.
Exactly. You see videos of like where they look stationary and it doesn't look like it's going anywhere. And you're right, it's because they're coming at you. So I don't know exactly if that's the case with these photos. It looks like it's moving off more to the northeast from like just
Yeah.
the direction of it. But I also have to admit, I mean, I get that this was back in the 70s where black and white photography was still being used, but that black and white photography of this tornado, and you're going to see more of this as we continue through, actually makes the tornadoes even more scary looking. It definitely gives it a much more intimidating, scarier look.
I definitely prefer the old black and white photos. They were actually really, really cool.
Well, even the black and white, I mean, it even goes to show that you don't really need color for some of these pictures, like, because
Yeah.
it wouldn't really make a difference. I mean, it pretty much shows exactly how dark the sky. I mean, look at the blackness of the sky on both these pictures.
Oh god, yeah. Oh god, yeah.
Now things actually get a little bit even more interesting. Not only were there photographs of this tornado. Oh wait, I forgot. Oh, I forgot about these ones here. So here were a few other ones, which no one said that this was the Kennard one, but based on the appearance of it, it looks like the same tornado. If it turns out, if anybody from the Super Outbreak page wants to correct me on it, I'll definitely change it, for a future time to present this. But I'll say for now that this was the same tornado.
Oh my god, look at it. Look at the pictures.
Yeah.
You can just tell.
And also, I just want to say this because I actually did borrow these pictures from the actual Facebook page. So some people who survived this tornado actually post these. I also want to say, just to be on the clear side, I don't actually own these pictures. All these pictures go to the respective photographers and survivors. So just want to point. And here's another thing too. If you notice these two pictures in particular, you have the massive wedge tornado in the background. And in these two, like, especially the third one, there's like ducks going by.
Yeah, do you know something? I thought I was tripping when I was looking at the pictures, and I was like, I can see ducks. And then I didn't want to say nothing because you're doing a presentation, so I didn't want to be saying rude and said, there's ducks passing by.
There's probably another reason why they're there. I think they probably are well aware that, of the weather, because, I've actually learned that certain types of, I'm not a huge bird expert, but I know birds can certainly, as well as other animals, they could sense the changes in barometric pressure. In fact, not necessarily these birds, but swallows are actually famous for flying low before a rain because the insects that they feed on are not carried up on the high thermal currents during cloudy days. So it could be something very similar with these ducks. Of course, they're probably well aware of what's coming at them, and they're probably afraid to fly. That's my best assumption.
I was always taught when cows, I know this isn't irrelevant, it's just because we're talking about animals and weather. I was always taught when cows huddle in together, there's a storm due.
Right. Oh, I just got the notification that the admin of the Super Outbreak page just approved my post, so it is now officially on the page. So we got it.
Oh, awesome.
Yeah. Anyway, and now if that's not enough, not only are there photographs of this tornado, I also have rare footage of this tornado too. Now, obviously, back in the 70s with Super 8, 16, and 35 millimeter home movie cameras, there was no sound to them. So there's no need to take care of the volume or anything like that. Just wanted to be on the clear side of things. But here is that footage.
You were like,
now
thank
you can
God.
really see it. Look at that.
Oh my God, look.
Look at that car's just driving. And look how fast look how fast it's rotating.
Oh God, yeah. I could see it.
See, it's crazy. Yep, see, now they're getting closer to the tornado. That's at least a good quarter mile, half mile wide.
Look at it, Nick. Look at how I'm memorized by that footage.
Oh, this was the aftermath. I was actually going to cut the footage and save that for a later time, but I'll show that. I'll show the full video for now. But yeah, you can just see the devastation of what an F4 tornado can do. Of course, also I want to shout out to all this footage. Also, of course, also belongs to the respective owners. So now, at the exact same time when both the Kennard and Jonesville tornadoes were on the ground, another equally violent F4 tornado touched down about 2 miles west of Millhausen in Decatur County at 3:15 p.m. and would bring a 37-mile long destructive path and was 3/4 of a mile wide. The F4 tornado began 1 mile southeast of Grammar, passed a mile south of Letts, struck Hamburg directly at 4:35 p.m., almost totally destroying the entire town. 90% of Hamburg was damaged or destroyed. The tornado reached its peak nearly at F5 intensity, northwest of New Point, as farms were obliterated. Rural homes and barns were also destroyed in Decatur County before the tornado dissipated in Franklin County, 2 miles south of Laurel at 3:45 p.m. after staying on the ground for roughly a half hour. 4 people were killed and at least 17 others were injured. Oh, now this is where things you talked about in F5. The first major tornado to have struck during the day was the F5 Terror that hit DePaul. Of the F5 tornadoes produced, and this was the first one of the day, of the F5 tornadoes produced by the outbreak, the DePaul Daisy Hill tornado was the first to form, touching down at 3:20 p.m. near New Boston, 3 miles south of Huffman in far western Perry County. It is probably the least known of the F5 tornadoes in the outbreak, as it traveled through rural areas in southern Indiana, northwest of Louisville, traversing about 65 miles through parts of Perry and Harrison counties and lasting 70 minutes. The tornado had only been on the ground for a few moments before it killed a woman in her mobile home. The funnel grew to over a mile wide as it plowed through Crawford County, missing many small communities and leveling several farms. It then kept heading east, past just west of Frenchtown, southeast of Branchville, north of Sulphur Springs, south of Kirby before entering into the southeast side of DePaul, 2 miles east of Palmyra, hitting Martinsburg and Daisy Hill directly between Bunker Hill and New Liberty. F5 damage was observed near the community of DePaul, where numerous farms, mobile homes, and houses were completely leveled. Many of the DePaul locals who didn't have a basement quickly rushed to people's homes that did have one. Areas of Palmyra, Martinsburg, and Borden were also heavily affected by the tornado. Another mobile home fatality of a woman took place in Harrison County, as the tornado was at F5 intensity on the southeast side of DePaul, and another death of a woman occurred east of Palmyra. Morgan Elementary School in northern Harrison County, Indiana, was directly hit by the tornado. 4 classrooms were destroyed, and the roof was removed from the school and placed on the cars of the faculty. In the southeastern corner of Washington County, Martinsburg was enveloped by the tornado and lost 38 of its 48 homes. Daisy Hill was particularly hard hit, with homes swept away as the tornado maintained its intensity. Fortunately, the children and faculty who were huddled in the hallways were not injured. All but 10 homes in Martinsburg were destroyed, and in the Daisy Hill community homes were completely swept. Here, wait, hang on one second.
You're right.
Okay. So it looks like I had accidentally added some repeating information. That's okay. They were completely swept away at F5 intensity before striking off to the northeast, finally lifting in southeast Scott County, 2 miles north of Indiana 160 at 4:29 p.m. after being on the ground for nearly 70 minutes. Now, get this too. I'm going to show them in just a moment. Published photographs of the storm reveal a very wide debris cloud and wall cloud structure with no visible condensation funnel at times. Overall, 6 were killed by the storm and 86 were injured. One of the fatalities occurred when 2 people riding in a school bus saw the tornado and took shelter in a nearby ditch near Branchville. The school bus was then thrown 50 feet into the ditch where the couple was sheltering in, crushing the couple and killing the woman.
Oh my God.
The tornado was the only F5 that had a peak width in excess of a mile wide, with winds up to 260 miles an hour. And now
I'll
here
quickly
are
do the comments. Eric says he was 3 when that happened. Brina Bina says she was 5 months when that happened.
oh wait a minute, hang on.
I don't believe her. She's telling me porkies. Hey, Bobby. It's 1974, isn't it, Nick?
Yep, April 3rd, 1974, 50 years
74.
ago today.
Hope you're well, Bobby.
So, anyways, here, those published photographs, here they are.
Oh, is that the F5? Aye, I can see it's already in the picture.
Yep. That is something you definitely would not want to be underneath, because you see right here, this tornado, like as I just said in the info, has no condensation funnel. So there is no wall like you would normally see with most tornadoes. And just because, although it looks like your typical wall cloud, because normally the wall cloud usually looks like this, like a layer of a layer cake dropping down. This is almost like more of like a mini wall cloud, because the wall cloud is kind of on the upper surface of the tornado itself, and then this is the actual tornado. And if you're caught underneath this giant cloud, you definitely would be in very big trouble then, because the winds underneath this would be extreme and could rip apart a home within seconds.
Without doubt. 1974, Bobby. Bobby was getting his dinner while we were talking.
Okay. Yeah, April 3rd, 1974. So today's the 50th anniversary. And that's not all. I also have color photographs of this tornado.
Oh, wow. Is that the F5, Nick?
That's the same tornado. That's correct. And you could still see it still has no condensation funnel. So basically, I mean, other than what you see on the top part of the funnel, the tornado was practically invisible. So
God.
That's what sometimes makes it. That's what gets scary when it comes to tornadoes, especially even if you're out in open country, and unless you know basically the different weather patterns and stuff like that, you wouldn't even know this thing was coming right at you, or unless you see debris being picked up, you wouldn't even know it's a tornado until it was literally upon you.
That's the problem with tornadoes. They can be so unpredictable. As you say, Nick, they can come out of thin air, be anywhere.
Absolutely.
You could be having a scenic drive, and there's the next thing, a tornado. Bobby says, thank you. I was 15. Don't remember this, but I'm 15, and it's 1974. Hi, Irene.
Hey, Irene. Good to see you. So next up, okay, so if that's not enough, at the exact same time, while the tornado tore its way through DePaul, further south, another supercell storm had given birth to another powerful tornado that was sighted 5 miles southwest near Hardinsburg, Kentucky, heading toward Brandenburg, a sleepy little river town on the Ohio River, 40 miles southwest of Louisville. This was probably, again, one of the most famous tornadoes of the outbreak. You watch any documentaries or you look it up, you're most likely going to see something about this tornado, the one that hit Brandenburg. Brandenburg is a rural town with about 1,700. The Brandenburg tornado, which was the second to have produced F5 damage touched down in Breckinridge County around 3:25 p.m., lasting 52 minutes and followed a 32-mile path, and at its widest point was at 500 yards wide. The tornado first moved across the north edge of Hardinsburg, inflicting F3 damage to homes at that location before it was even 10 minutes old. So it already showed signs that it was already a violent tornado. The tornado grew in size and intensity and quickly became violent as it moved into Meade County, producing F4 damage as it passed north of Irvington, sweeping away numerous homes in this rural area along the Ohio River. Vehicles were thrown hundreds of yards from residences and mangled, and a few were completely wrapped around trees. One home that was swept away sustained total collapse of a poured concrete walkout basement wall. A news photographer reported that the tornado left no grass as it crossed Kentucky 79 in this area, and canceled checks from near Irvington were later found in Ohio. Residents had no idea, in Brandenburg had no idea what was coming their way. The only warning, a last-second shout, and in 30 seconds, 31 people will die. Now, unlike the other ones I showed, there are no known photos or footage of this historic tornado. And one reason for that may be that it didn't look like a typical tornado by the time it reached Brandenburg. The twister was probably extremely wide, as I said before, a wedge tornado, which, for those that don't know, it's basically when the tornado was wedge shaped, not funnel shaped, like you'd see, for example. Most people would think of tornadoes sometimes as the classic Wizard of Oz type tornado, where, it's a rope and it kind of bends around and it skips across the ground or whatever. That's just not the case, for some of these tornadoes. So if it's wedge shaped and not funnel shaped, that means it has, much like the DePauw tornado, that means it has a larger base of circulation on the ground. So, which also meant that it was beneath a very low cloud base and may have looked basically more like a solid wall of cloud rather than a slender funnel that most people associate with tornadoes. Past Irvington, the tornado tore directly through Brandenburg at F5 intensity, completely leveling and sweeping away numerous homes, some of which were well built and anchor bolted. In Brandenburg, at the local newspaper office, the Meade County Messenger, conversation at the newspaper ironically revolves around the weather. Just 2 days, as I mentioned earlier, on April 1st and 2nd, 23 tornadoes had developed across the central and southern United States, causing wind damage right in their own county. That storm and the devastation it caused is fresh on the minds of the employees at the office, when residents of both the office and when employees at the office and residents throughout town look at the sky that afternoon. According to what most residents have remembered, eyewitnesses reported that the sky had turned to a green yellow and felt different. It was then residents began to realize the danger and immediately took shelter. The massive F5 tornado slams into the river town. 15 minutes after the National Weather Service issued a tornado warning for the Brandenburg area, the storm destroyed 128 homes and 30 businesses in the small town, many of them swept completely away. The town's downtown area was also devastated, with 18 of the fatalities occurring at a single block along Green Street alone. The F5 tornado grinds through the heart of Brandenburg. The vast majority of homes and businesses, including the high school, Baptist church, the old bank building, and Meade Hotel that were in the tornado's path, were leveled, with many reduced to clean slabs and empty basements. One obliterated home sustained total collapse of its concrete walkout basement. Wait a minute, I don't know if it's already saying the same thing. It's fine. Cars were also thrown and mangled beyond recognition. some of which had nothing left but the frame and tires. The radio station, WMMG, was also destroyed. Sadly, the citizens of Brandenburg had received very little warning, which may account in part for the tragically high death toll. I mean, just think about, as you just heard, it was just terrible. It has been reported that the only warning received by listeners to WMMG was when the disc jockey on duty looked out the window, saw the twister coming, and shouted at his listeners to take cover shortly before the tornado destroyed the radio station. Most of the trees and shrubberies in town were debarked and stripped off at the base and thrown. Extensive windrowing of debris occurred, and numerous vehicles were destroyed as well, some of which had... Oh, wait. See, it's saying the same thing again. See, again, I was in such a hurry when I was putting this together.
It's all right. While you're sorting that out, Irene's put up a comment. I guess I have to forget about my umbrella. We get them in China City because the land is flat. Tornadoes act like hurricanes here, and wind picks up and destroys everything in its path. Natalie says hi, Nick.
Hey, Natalie. Yeah, I looked at I've actually at times been looking at the comments, and that's the one, popular misconception. When it comes to tornadoes or other types of weather, especially when it comes to other countries, that they don't ever happen there, when in fact they do. And I remember from a documentary they briefly talked about tornadoes in Japan. And as far as what I've been told, Japan does get its share of tornadoes. Obviously not as big as the United States does, but they definitely do get them, every now and then.
Yeah, even Britain, even the UK, but we get them F1s, and it's very far between.
Yeah, you guys usually get the weaker tornadoes, like the F0, F1. You might, the strongest you might get maybe is an EF2. Well, I know they use the enhanced Fujita scale, maybe an EF2, but and I know I've said this repeatedly before, but the last time from when I remember researching that the UK was ever affected by a major tornado or outbreak, F2 or plus, was now almost, now over 70 years ago, back in 1954 in downtown London, when 7 different tornadoes struck the downtown area. And that was probably, I think to this day, that probably still marks as the deadliest tornado outbreak to have ever hit the UK. I could be wrong, but I believe that might be the right one.
Yeah. Compared to you guys in America that get F3, 4s, and 5s.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Well, and here's the thing, too. And I know this has been said hundreds of times when on a lot of the documentaries. People always think, too, when it comes to tornadoes, that size shouldn't matter, especially if it's going to be a small one. Well, here's the problem, basically. A small tornado can knock down a tree and it can go right through the house and it can kill somebody. A small tornado can topple a car. That can kill somebody as well. But most people but the most deaths that obviously usually occur are from the larger tornadoes, the EF3 and EF4 the EF4 and EF5 tornadoes. Those tornadoes have winds that pack at 300 miles an hour. They could just, go right through homes. They could, sweep, like you just heard with Brandenburg, they could sweep houses off their foundations. They could rip trees right out of the ground, anything you could think of. They are certainly, without a shadow of a doubt, the most violent storms on Earth.
No, I can absolutely imagine. I can't imagine what you guys must go through. To obviously suffer that, to rebuild, for it to happen again, it must be really, really draining. Do you guys have house insurance that covers that situation?
What is it?
When obviously you have to rebuild, it happens again, then you have to rebuild, and then it happens again. Do you guys have some sort of insurance that covers that, if that happens?
I know for a fact that there is some way. I think it all depends. Of course, obviously, like especially if you're living in areas like Tornado Alley, they often will make sure. See, if it's too bad Rosie wasn't able to be on because she obviously would be quite the expert on this. For her to live down in Oklahoma. But from what I can remember was I know a lot of people throughout Tornado Alley has often made these. They don't necessarily make them tornado proof, but they make them stronger. Of course, also in addition to you got the storm shelters and basement that are added too.
Oh well, that's always the bonus.
Yeah. So I'm glad we actually stopped for a second because I was able to fix it. I just saw your message. Yeah, we're definitely gonna have to make a part 2 out of this. So this will definitely give me some time to add more to what I wasn't able to add. But this honestly really went a lot better than I expected it was gonna be. So
Listen, it's been a brilliant presentation. You always do really good presentations, and don't ever get stressed out about them, or you'll end up turning that hair grey.
I appreciate that. We're just going to go on. I only got another 12, 15 minutes left before I do have to end things, though, because I know there's another show that follows right after me on Things Network and Pack Channel. So
Cool.
a curtain rod was found speared deep. Oh, my God. Most of the trees and shrubbery in town were debarked and stripped off at the base and thrown. Extensive windrowing of debris occurred. A curtain rod was found speared deeply into the trunk of one tree in town. Grass was scoured from the ground in some areas as well. Several tombstones in the Cap Anderson Cemetery were toppled and broken, and some were displaced a small distance. Within minutes, the twister is gone, but the destruction is overwhelming. I know, of course, some people are asking how come I don't have the damage or aftermath photographs or footage. I'm actually saving a lot of that for the later part of the slideshow for probably most likely part 2. So in case anyone asks, I will be putting pictures in near the end. About half of the town's buildings were destroyed. Exiting Brandenburg, the tornado crossed the Ohio River into Indiana, producing F4 damage north of Irvington before quickly dissipating over southern Harrison County at 4:17 p.m. The same storm would later produce tornadoes in the Louisville metro area. 31 people were killed, 28 in the Brandenburg area, and 257, nearly 1 out of 7 residents, were injured. 30 businesses were destroyed and damaged, totaled over $10 million. When the tornado struck, when the tornado struck on April 3rd, 1974, many of the Brandenburg residents at that time had also experienced a major flood of the Ohio River that affected the area almost 50 years earlier in 1937. 40 years later, yeah, as well as numerous other communities along the river, including Louisville and Paducah, if I'm saying that correctly. Now, here's another interesting fact about this one. The Brandenburg tornado is the only tornado to have officially produced documented F5/EF5 damage in the state of Kentucky, with the 1971 Gosser Ridge, Kentucky tornado being rated F5 by the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration and the Nuclear Regulatory Commission before being downgraded to F4 after 2000. About 40 miles away from Brandenburg in Louisville, forecasters at the National Weather Service have no idea what's happened. Looking at their radar, they could see the path of the storm, but they could not detect the tornado. Only when they hear news of it on the radio do they understand the reality of the green blobs on their radar. It was then they learned that every one of these storms were producing severe weather. Now, just minutes after learning the devastation in Brandenburg, the forecasters see another disaster looming on their radar. The storm, what that exactly was, the storm that caused the tornado in Brandenburg was in line and was not only heading right toward them, but was now heading for Kentucky's largest city, Louisville.
Oh my God.
Now, back in Indiana, a few minutes after the Brandenburg F5 tornado had touched down, yet another monstrous tornado had developed just 1 mile southwest of Blountsville and 11 miles southeast of Muncie at 3:30 p.m. Once again, I got actual photos of the tornado. The tornado, rated an F4, passing near Parker City and ending 3 miles north of Ridgeville, just inside Jay County. The funnel grew to a mile-wide monster and packing winds up near 260 miles an hour as it crossed Indiana 32 east of Parker City, showing off its multiple vortices. This large multiple vortex tornado was widely photographed. In Parker City, television cameraman Wally Hubbard spots the funnel and risks his life to grab his camera and capture footage of the F4 tornado from just over a mile away, which I have too. I'm going to show that shortly. The tornado then ripped apart a large steel reinforced school, Monroe Central School, just 20 minutes after students had been dismissed at 3:15 p.m. School officials later noted how fortunate they were that students had boarded buses for their rides home only a few minutes before the storm hit. The massive damage to the school, by that time occupied only by a few administrators, teachers, and staff members, all of whom managed to have survived, which made it seem likely that an earlier arrival of the tornado would have resulted in mass casualties. Can you imagine? I mean, just think about it. Can you imagine if that tornado struck just a few hours earlier while school was in session? I mean,
oh my God, that would have been heartbreaking.
It would have been horrific. So they were, as bad as it was, they were fortunate that it did hit at the time it did, because at that point, most of the students, like I said, were not in the building. Most of them had left, including some of the staff members that also, that worked at the school. But there were still a few remaining students, and they managed to take cover before that. So it definitely could have been a lot more worse than it was.
It certainly could be. Kelly's missed the last 10 minutes. Want to hurt my husband.
Oh, really?
Okay. Yeah.
Sorry, I'm just.
No, you're absolutely fine, love. But that was very lucky for that school to get out when they did. Definitely. I mean, You look at those pictures there, and wow. See, when I look at them, it's breathtaking for myself, who's never ever seen one of these things on, go. Mm-hmm. But it ain't so breathtaking for you guys that live in America and experience it.
Right. Let's see here. The F4 tornado also reduced forests of old sturdy trees to splinters in a matter of moments and leveled nearby homes in Parker City as it raged on for 22 miles, killing 1 and injuring 12. Numerous homes outside of Parker City were destroyed as well. The tornado continued its onslaught, crossing Highway 38 at 3:45 p.m., which it began to show signs of weakening to 4 miles southwest of Ridgeville in Randolph County, where it lifted at 3:55 p.m. after being on the ground for 25 minutes. The footage that Wally Hubbard had captured would later be reviewed by numerous scientists. Photogrammetric studies of the film helped determine the wind speeds of tornadoes. And get this footage that I'll be showing you is where the highest wind speeds measured using motion picture technique were recorded, which was at 284 miles per hour, about 1,000 feet above the ground in a suction vortex. Now, here's some of the other pictures of the tornado itself, and it's actually a little bit hard to believe that these are actual photographs. I mean, if you look at these two especially, well, maybe this one, it actually looks almost more like a painting, doesn't it?
It does. It actually does look like somebody's painted it. But I just love pictures like these. Alright, he called her during the show. The Moncello tornado was my tornado. I was 10.
Oh my God. Yeah, I just saw Kelly's comment. We have one of the survivors here. Called me during this. The Monticello tornado was my tornado. I was 10. Kelly, I just want to let you know we haven't spoken about that tornado yet because I'm actually kind of doing this in chronologically timely order. So we haven't talked about that yet, but we're going to be making this a two-parter. We're going to continue on with this tomorrow. So if you could definitely watch the rest of what you may have missed
Yeah.
beforehand, but there's definitely going to be more. So
what I'd just like to point out, guys, is that tomorrow usually Nick's show is 10:30 on a Wednesday, but my show's 9 p.m. Tomorrow at UK time. But when I make the advertisement, I will send it to Nick and he will post it. Oh, Kelly's got to work tomorrow.
Work tomorrow. Well, either way, it will still we'll definitely be talking about it. So you can always check it out later.
Yeah.
So we're just going to go on for just a few more minutes because I'm almost up. But I just want to show something else on these photos. This one in particular. Now you could really see this one showing multiple vortices right here.
Yeah. I was going to say, is that two tornadoes at one?
It looks like it, but like I said, this is another multi-vortex tornado. That's where several smaller tornadoes are rotating around the main funnel. And those tornadoes, they can actually be very destructive. I mean, they could literally add another 100 miles per hour to the main funnel. So it's as small as they look. Some people think that they're weak. No, they're completely the opposite. So that's where you don't want to be ever. So
definitely no.
Now here's that footage I was talking about.
Yeah, shows the footage.
Yeah, check this out. Once again, there's no sound to it, obviously. Look at that. He's just a mile away from this tornado. He is dangerously close. Look at that. Now, right here, you can see multiple vortices dancing around.
You can. It looks like there's about 4 or 5 tornadoes there and one.
Look at that. Cars just driving down the road like no big deal. Jeez. Look how fast it's moving. Sorry, what were you saying?
You just think they're driving along going, it's just another tornado. It's fine. Who cares?
Yeah. Oh, my mom brings that up a lot. Look at that. Going right behind that farm.
Jesus.
Oh, look. So you can still see the multiple vortex structure. Look at that.
Oh, God, yeah.
Incredible.
So you're not just dealing with one tornado there, by the looks of it?
It's almost like, I remember hearing this from a documentary. They say it's almost like a nest full of snakes, if you will. Now, I'm sorry, go on. What were you going to say?
I was going to say, thanks for that, Nick. I've got a huge phobia.
Well, that's just, no pun intended. So, now what's going to be playing next? It's going to show that footage again, but this was when Dr. Ted Theodore Fujita, who was the inventor of the Fujita scale, actually studied the film. So here, what you're about to see in just a second, the Parker tornado, this was when it was measured. Yeah, it was reshot, and it was kind of kept in a frame while the edge of the frame is allowed to move freely. So you're going to see the same thing. Yeah, repeated 5 times. So now it has that frame sector in it. So this was under Fujita's study. And at that time, that was when he was trying to determine exactly the wind speed of this tornado, especially its rotation. Oh, this is when it was. Oh, that's actually. Oh, I didn't realize that was right over Monroe Central High School.
Oh, my God.
So it was right over the school then. Yeah, it was moving pretty fast too, as you saw. I mean, it had to at least be moving at well over 50 miles an hour. Yeah, I can see why it keeps repeating because it is a relatively quick frame. But that's pretty okay. So combined scene. So now they're going to show the full thing. It's too bad you don't see anything like that anymore. Like when it comes to studying videos like this.
Oh God. You can see
I'm just
it's
gonna.
been together there and then breaking off into different ones.
So it looks like they're. Oh, I think I know what's going on. They're like doing it at different speeds at different parts of the film strip. So that's why we're seeing the same thing. But I think we get the idea though, because it's just going to show the same thing over and over again. Okay, so we're going to end things. But however, I have one more piece of footage that I'm going to show, and this is going to be it. This is going to be a lot shorter. This is actually taken from a documentary that I also own myself. It's on a VHS tape. This was from the video documentary, the Tornadoes, the Entity. And this was made back in the early 90s. And this footage was even rarer than the one you just saw. And as far as I know, this was the only tape or documentary of anything that ever showed this footage. So this is also the one where it doesn't display that multiple vortex structure. I'm going to turn off the volume for this matter because it actually repeated some of the same information that I said. But it's still fascinating footage. Check this out. That crossing the road.
Yep.
Police car going nearby, probably to warn Parker City. Look at it, it's growing.
Oh my God, look at it grow.
Okay. All right. So, unfortunately, we do have to end things here because, again, I know things are kind of running late for me. I'm already 5 minutes overhead. I mean overtime, but Lois, I know you got to get going, but we'll definitely continue on with part 2 of this tomorrow. It's going to give you a lot more interesting. And yes, Kelly, I did see your comment. I definitely will be posting on the Super Outbreak page, so that way everyone else can tune in. You can see it again. If you definitely have any questions, or even better yet, if you would like to share your story about what you remember on that day back in 1974, feel free to send it to me. I'd love to hear it. I'll actually even say this right now. I actually even have some relatives who lived not far from Monticello that, while not necessarily were directly affected by the tornado, they were just a few miles away from Monticello, and they still remember hearing about it when it occurred. So, but yeah, feel free to send me if you want to. Feel free to send me a message if you're interested. But yeah, we'll continue on with this tomorrow. Again, Lois, thank you so much. And
You're very welcome, honey, anytime. But thank you for having me on Nick Files. It's my first time.
Like I said, you're probably the only time I think I've ever had someone else on Nick Files was Zach, who runs the Pack channel. But he was only coming on just for a few minutes to kind of introduce me to the Pack channel, because that was the first time I had my show on that network. So technically you are the second, but you're the first full-timer guest, though.
Oh, thank you very much. Thank you.
Oh, check this out. Kelly said, few miles from Rochester. Okay, so yeah, she wasn't far. I think I know exactly where that's at. Because in case you wonder, Kelly, I'm actually from Chicago, so I'm not far from the Illinois-Indiana border. My relatives, they live, I don't remember exactly where, but it was definitely not far from Monticello. But anyways, we're going to end things here for now. Like I said, we'll pick up for tomorrow. And again, this will give me a lot more time now to get more pictures, more film footage added. And yeah, we'll just pick up from where we started then.
Take care, folks.
So you guys all have a great night. Take care.
Bye.